In part one, the quote that we're going to be talking about is, however, biomechanical evidence comparing lifting strategies associated with varying lumbar postures does not support the use of a single technique over another when lifting loads during occupational tasks. Evidence to support the adoption of the neutral spine during lifting, therefore, clearly requires review in the context of S&C coaches' practice. So that's the quote. Now, what seems a bit odd to me is that they're comparing occupational tasks and lifting to strength and conditioning coaching practices, where the lifting is completely different. The size of the object, the weight of the object potentially, the position of the object, because S&C coaching practices are very controlled. You're able to control the reps, you're able to control the weight, you're able to control recovery time between reps and sets, you're able to control how many exercises you do, and therefore how many reps that you do as well. So it seems a bit odd that they're using the fact that in occupational studies and occupational tasks, people are using varying lifting postures. I think I looked at the reference for this, and it was the stoop squat, the one with the straight back, and the squat. So like an RDL type position where you hip hinge, a squat style where you squat down and keep your back upright, and then a stoop where you have your legs straight and you just bend straight over with a bent back. I think that's the three, if I'm not mistaken. So the first point is a bit odd that they're comparing the two when there are so many different or so many different nuances that come with occupational tasks, the nuances with S&C coaching, and the fact that they don't really match. Also, another sort of caveat to it is also the population. So the people that are actually doing the lift. So if you think about occupational tasks, that's like an average Joe. That's anyone that works and has a manual job that requires you to lift. Whereas strength and conditioning environments are generally very fit individuals. They've been, they're conditioned from doing it for a prolonged period of time as a general rule. And so you can sort of start to see that there are some inconsistencies, I guess, is a way of describing it, in that quote, for the very simple fact they're comparing an occupational environment to a S&C environment. Because, as I've mentioned, like the object could be very awkward. It could be an awkward box to lift in an awkward position that requires a certain position. Now, obviously, a study is going to be more controlled than that. And I think another reference further in the study, I don't think I cover this in these 5 parts, but it was about a 5 kilo weight as well. So again, you can't really compare an occupational task that requires you to lift a 5 kilo weight to an S&C environment where you could be lifting 50 kilos, 100 kilos, in some environments 200 kilos, whatever it may be. You can't really compare the two. So I'm sort of going around in a little bit of a circle here, but when I read it for the first time, it just seemed a bit odd that when they're talking about using a neutral spine and the efficacy and the safety of a neutral spine is being compared across occupation and S&C environments. So it just seems a bit odd. So that's kind of like the first one, and there, as we work through, there are other examples of this where it's just a bit, I just don't quite understand how they've joined those dots and things like that. So if I was talking about a neutral spine, I would want a neutral spine being used in an S&C environment should inform the S&C environment, because they are two completely different things, and there is the occupational environment will be a different mechanism of injury, and I think we'll cover one of these in the parts, is a different injury mechanism than an S&C environment, not only because of the object being lifted, but also the person doing the lifting. So they will have certain physical attributes that will be you'll be able to lift, rather than the occupational individual, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the first one, where it is sort of loosely talking about neutral spine, but it's more to do with the inconsistency in the fact that they're talking about occupational environment and joining it to the strength and conditioning environment, and saying the occupational environment should inform the S&C environment, which, I mean, loosely and broadly maybe, but you would want to see S&C involving or informing S&C.